All right, so let's get started I'm assuming people know me. Hi, Howard McBroom, how are you? Thanks everybody for coming. For those of you, I'm assuming almost everybody who came to our conference, but I guess it's possible, you guys can use the reactions. So if you go down to the bottom, that's how you raise your hand. So you can, if you came to the conference, please go down to reactions and you can choose thumbs up, clap, raise hands, just to let me know that you were at our conference. Because as we're going to be spending a lot of time doing follow-up from that, answering final questions that people may have had from what they heard at the conference. Just go down to reactions. So looks like I know Howard was there because he spoke on 2 panels. Go ahead and let me know if you were I know Molly Kennedy was at the conference because she was on several panels. If you were at the conference, please just in some way tell me that you were there. That would be great. All right, so it looks like not everybody actually went to the conference. So you may be needing to get a little caught up on what we're talking about today. But I just want to thank everybody for being at the conference. It was record setting. We had over 1,000 people logged in at one time. We also had we had 1,400 people register, and at any given time there could be 1,000 people. We had over probably 150 or more speakers. I never actually counted how many speakers came. We had simultaneous interpretation in 5 languages, and in Spanish, in Mongolian, Mandarin, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, which was a lot. And we had some technical glitches, but not a lot. We had some amazing speakers, some amazing leaders, and it was just such a great experience for so many folks. And even though we were all virtual, which I thought kind of sucked completely, because I love getting hugs from all the people who come to our conferences, I was really so pleased that that people were able to make connections, and we were really able to get a chance, particularly during those meetups. Hopefully some of you went to the meetups. They were super fun. It's a platform called Wonder, which we are planning to do some of our some meetings using that same platform in the future, because we really just loved it. And so we're really hoping that in the future, we'll be able to hold in-person conferences and also have an online opportunity for folks who can't travel. So I guess I wanted to get started with sort of general things of how people thought it went. You are also welcome to use this time to ask any questions, like, I heard a speaker say X and I didn't get their name, or can you please get me their information? We are right now, Ed is furiously getting uploading all of the video, the many hours of recordings that we have, and she will have them by next week on a special YouTube channel, and we will get you the links to all of those, so you can go back and watch those sessions that you missed, or because you were probably at a different session. So you will be able to watch the entire conference within a week or so, probably less than a week. And we also are, we already are going to be releasing just to the general community the first 3 plenaries, the first 3 speeches at the plenary. So we're super excited to show you all the conference that you missed, the pieces that you missed, but also you can go back and look again. For many of the speakers who had sort of PowerPoint presentations, we are going, for those that they're allowing us, and they sent them to us, we will have uploaded them onto a website and have the link on the YouTube page. So you'll go to the YouTube video, and in there will be the link to be able to see the the PowerPoint on the screen, even though the PowerPoint on the screen is the same thing as going to the link, but still some people like to spend more time really looking at it. You know, I could go through sort of every day and how it went Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I'd rather just at least start with opening it up to people who have questions or comments. And then if we still have time, then what I'm going to do is have everybody, I might go through, you know, what did you think of this? What do you think of that? I also am happy to give you all an update on our legislation, which passed out of committee last week and is moving forward to the Senate floor in the near future. So I'm going to start. Todd Rubian, your hand is up. Did you have a question or a comment? Or was your comment, or is your hand up because you wanted?
I just wanted to say I was there. It's a great conference. I was there at the conference and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic.
That means a lot. That means a lot because I truly respect your opinion. Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. Zonia Sanchez, your hand's up. Oops, I have to unmute you. Go ahead, Zonia. Oh, I think I'm pronouncing your name. Zonia Sanchez.
Sí, buenas tardes. Ok. Yuri, muy bonita la conferencia, estuvo excelente. Yo hablo solamente el español y desgraciadamente yo quise entrar a algún uno de los seminarios, pero no pude. Mi pregunta para ustedes, cuando las ponga en YouTube, ¿van a estar en el idioma español también?
Unfortunately, no. The ones that were completely in Spanish, Sonia, will be available, but the ones that were interpreted in the 5 different languages will not be available because Zoom is a horrible platform in that way, and they do not record the interpretations, the Spanish interpretations. So I apologize for that. We were really hoping to be able to make that happen, but unfortunately, we can't do that. However, one of the things that we are going to offer, I see somebody in the chat asking about our book. We do have this, not all of the book, but much of the book that we wrote, the parts that we wrote ourselves, interpreted in Spanish, and the parts that DDS translated into Spanish, we have that. So one of the things that I want to do, remind me of this, Ed, is I want to get all of the Spanish stuff up on a website so that instead of us having to send a PDF to everybody, we can just have it on the website and people can just click on it.
Will do.
Oh yeah, I think it can probably just go in the Spanish self-determination interchange. That might be the easiest thing. So thank you for that question, and I apologize that we are not able to offer something better. Spanish is not the only language people wanted to get the interpretation for. Does anybody else have comments, questions, follow-ups from things that they heard at the conference? So some people have been asking about your swag bags, the packages. So we sent out hundreds and hundreds of them before the conference. And the ones we sent to anybody who had registered prior to March 30th. In some cases, we were people put in their address incorrectly, like maybe missed a number or they didn't put the whole address in some way. And so those packages were returned. I have a giant pile of them on my ground in my living room. It's a little frustrating because you guys should know that those packages cost a lot of money to send, and now we're going to try to resend those. So if you actually registered before March 30th and didn't receive your package, it's possible it's because the address was wrong and it was returned to sender. For those of you who registered after March 30th, What we're doing right now, you should know that those packages are quite expensive for us. The t-shirt, between the t-shirt, the book, the packaging and the mailing, it's close to that $50 that people have to pay. And we made a huge leap of faith and sent it out to everybody who registered before March 30th, regardless of whether you had your regional center or your FMS had paid in advance. It was a huge leap of faith. And I'm sure that in some cases people will not get paid for. But for everyone post March 31st, March 31st and on, what we're doing is we are trying to confirm that you have been approved for funding. We don't have to have received the money from your regional center. We just have to have the funding approved. And if it's been approved, then in the next week, we will be doing another big giant mailing, maybe next week or the week after. We have to get your t-shirts printed, but we will be sending out another big mailing. So you'll all be getting it in the next few weeks, okay? Bonnie, you had a question.
I do. The conference was really great and I learned a lot. I'm confused about the Medicaid waiver. My daughter has the institutional deeming waiver through regional center, and somebody was typing in during a presentation that you can only have one waiver. And then I'm also aware of the personal care waiver. Could you help me understand some of that?
Yeah, so for those people who don't know what a waiver is, a waiver, I'm not going to explain why it's called a waiver because it's not important. But a waiver is the contract that the state of California has with each state to provide matching funds for home and community-based services. So I'll make it very specific. So my son, let's say he receives, this is prior to the self-determination program, he went to a day program. And so that day program, let's say the regional centers, and meaning the state of California. Remember, the regional centers are not spending their money. They're spending our money. It's our taxpayer dollars, 100% of it that they're spending. So let's say the regional center is paying for the, let's say $20 an hour, just to make it very simple. $20 an hour for this day program for my son. That of that $20, it gets matched 50 cents on the dollar by the federal government. So instead of the state paying that full 20, half of that's going to get paid for by the feds. And the way we get that money is by signing this giant, massive 500-page contract with the federal government. And we have set special service codes, and it's all really very complicated. And the regional center spends a lot of time dealing with that. Now, the major waiver that people are on is called the Developmental Disability Waiver, or the DD waiver, or it's also called the HCBS waiver, which is a home and community-based services waiver. For people who go into the self-determination program, you are automatically switched over to the self-determination waiver, which is a separate contract that we have between the state of California and the federal government to get matching funds for our self-determination services. You do not have to do anything to get switched over to the new waiver. When you go from the traditional system to self-determination, regional centers automatically move you into the self-determination waiver. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. You don't even have to know about it. So the reason why there were issues coming up on the waiver during the conference is because there are certain children and adults who are in a completely different waiver than the main waiver that the regional centers work on. They're called the HCBA waiver. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it's actually a small group of people. They're usually people with significant health issues. And you cannot be on both the HCBA waiver and the self-determination waiver at the same time. So for those of you who are on the HCBA waiver, there is a special way that people need to work with their regional center to ensure that they can access the self-determination program. Okay, so if your child is not on any kind of special waiver, then there's nothing you need to worry about. But great question. I know it came up a couple of times. Thanks, Bonnie. Next up is Netta Anderson.
Hi there, Judy. The
Hi.
conference was absolutely amazing. It's hard to try to be in so many places at
Yeah.
one time, but I'm looking forward to being able to receive the opportunity to squeeze into some of the other classes that I wasn't able to get into, or workshops. I did pester our regional center constantly after I got home about the orientation piece. And lo and behold, yesterday in the mail, our regional center sent out 5 orientation dates and times so that we could schedule for San Andreas Regional Center. And so I jumped right on it. But that was a blessing to know those strategies ahead of time to make things work.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really excellent point. So let me tell you all about the orientation, because many of you are going to be going through it over the next couple months. The orientation that was developed by DDS that has yet to be rewritten sucks really bad. Like, it's horrible. It's 6 hours long. Different regional centers are doing it different ways. Some are making you sit for 6 hours. Of course, everything's virtual now, so I don't really know how things are going to work. In my regional center, Westside Regional Center, we did it in 2 Saturday mornings. So you did 3 hours on one Saturday, the next week did the other 3 hours. Even though we divided it up and we tried to make it interesting, it was completely overwhelming. And I believe that the way that the orientation works is one of the great barriers to participation. I am really trying to work with the other local advisory committee chairs to try to redesign the orientation so that it becomes much more accessible to people. The other thing that's really important to note is that nowhere in the self-determination law, like, it's really important for people to understand that the self-determination program is not like some special kind thing that is happening to us. We made it happen. People with disabilities and family members worked very hard to get the law passed, and everything we need to know about how it works is either in the law or is in the directives the DDS has sent out about the law. So in the law, nowhere does it say that the orientations need to be conducted by DDS. Nowhere in there. In fact, all it says is that participants or their family members are required to go through an orientation. That's all it says. Now, going through an orientation with your own regional center makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense because you want to hear how they're doing it. Unfortunately, there's 21 regional centers and they're implementing it in 21 different ways. And so hearing how your regional center is doing it is an advantage. However, regional centers shouldn't be doing it all that differently. I plan on clarifying this issue and ensuring that other groups besides regional centers can lead orientations. And if that is the case, then DVU plans to do orientations. We plan to lead in-person and recorded orientations over the next few months. And I will need guidance from DDS, in case you don't know what that is, Department of Developmental Services, to be able to say to regional centers, here's the way that somebody can say they went through orientation. And even if it's run by a nonprofit like DVU, or maybe other groups might want to do orientations too. It doesn't have to be DVU. So we plan on doing it to try to help people really understand it, the various pieces, and try to make it so that it's very, very simplified. But I want to, before we spend that energy developing our own version of the orientation, I want to verify that DDS will allow it. Okay, go ahead, Netta.
Judy, ours was only 2 hours. It is only 2 hours. It's been cut down. It was 4, but it's been cut down to 2.
Okay, well, that means they cut out a lot of the slides that DDS gave them, because DDS's orientation is 96 slides and many different activities within those 96 slides. So you stop for 10 or 15 minutes, you do different kinds of activities. It's super, it's supposed to be interactive. And I was actually part of developing the orientation for DDS. And once I got done sort of making suggestions, they went back and added another 30 or 40 slides. And I didn't even know that. So, for me, it's really important that it's experiential, that you kind of feel how it works. And I also believe that it needs to be done in small segments. So instead of even doing a 2-hour orientation, I think we should do a 1-hour orientation on person-centered planning. You go through person-centered planning, you do that, and then you start your person-centered planning. Then you get to a point where you have to certify your individual budget. We do an orientation just about the individual budget. Then we do a separate orientation on developing your spending plan, and a separate orientation on ongoing issues, or hiring staff, or hiring an independent facilitator. So I see it being in very small segments that's recorded, that people can go back to, watch over and over again. I like doing stuff live because that way we can get questions answered, but then having a version of it that's recorded, I think, is also really important for people to go back and learn from. Thanks for your question, Netta. Lorena, you're next. Go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Okay, my English is not good, but I try, okay?
No, Lorena, you are welcome to speak in Spanish.
Okay. Tengo una preocupación muy grande. He preguntado a varias personas, pero unas personas me contestan de una forma, otras de otra. En el caso de mi hijo, tiene 21 años y me dicen que puedo empezar el proceso de self-determination en junio. Pero mi preocupación es que él nada más tiene Respi y diapers. Entonces, cuando él cumple los 22 años, no va a tener suficiente dinero para un programa de día. Entonces, tendría que esperarme hasta que él esté en un programa de día cuando cumple los 22 años. Esa es mi pregunta.
Excellent question, Lorena. So this is where we talk about a change in circumstances to change the budget. So you know that you can change an individual budget for 2 reasons: unmet need and change in circumstance. The most common change in circumstance is a young adult leaves the school system and therefore would require a larger budget because they're now dependent upon the regional center to provide those services and supports. If you thought about it, in the traditional system, the same things happens. You're leaving your school district and you go into become an adult, and you have what's called a transition IPP. And that transition IPP helps provide you with those services like day programs. So what's going to happen is that your son is now 21 and you should start in the self-determination program now, because that will get you prepared for it. And then I would say about 4 or 5 months before he turns 22, when he's going to be leaving the schools, you should have a transition IPP. And what that looks like is they will say, okay, if he were not in self-determination, he would require these set of services. Let's say a day program, independent living services, personal assistance services. Does he need nursing? All different kinds of things. Generally, adults shouldn't really be getting respite anymore. They should be getting what's called personal assistance services, which are outside of the home. Personally, I think anybody over the age of 5 years old should be getting personal assistance services, because you shouldn't be stuck at home all the time. So what the regional center is supposed to do, doesn't mean they're going to do it. What the regional center is supposed to do is take your son's life as he would be as an adult in the traditional system and put a dollar amount to that. And then give you that money to use in self-determination. So let's say it's decided at the IPP that he would require, if he were not in self-determination, a day program. So that's going to cost annually, let's say, $30,000. And then he would need independent living services. That's another, let's say, $15,000 for the year. He would require an increase in personal assistance. So let's say that's another $10,000 a year. And you would come up with these sets of services. He doesn't need to take any of those services. He doesn't need to go to a day program. He doesn't need to get personal assistance hours. He doesn't need to have independent living services. It's just that becomes a dollar amount, and that dollar amount is what is your individual budget. And then you can take that individual budget and use it pretty much however you want for him to live his life. So let's say he wants to go to community college, or he wants to join a gym, or have a personal trainer, or wants a girlfriend. You could have a matchmaker. There's so many cool and great things you can do with the self-determination program that you cannot do in the traditional system. And remember that that budget is just a dollar amount. It's not how you're spending your money. It's just what your it's just the total amount of money. Did that help you at all?
Yes, it was very helpful. Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Thank you.
Feel free to come back as you're getting closer to our SDP Connect, and we'll help answer any questions or try to get you over any hoops.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, my friend, Robert Taylor. Hi, Robert.
Hello, Judy. Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, Judy. This is
Hi,
me. How are
Robert.
you? Okay, very good, Judy. Well, I want to thank you for a great All In for Self-Determination video conference. It was really wonderful. I enjoyed it. And thank you for taking the advice of disability justice. I'm in favor of that like you. And I like the idea of definitely getting the orientations out there for us to know about self-determination. When are you planning to make it? And how we can have access to them, not only at my regional center, which is Redwood Coast, but in the other 20 regional centers as well. That's a question I have.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those people who don't know Robert, he's the chair of the local advisory committee at his regional center, which is Redwood Coast. He's also a member of the statewide advisory committee. And most importantly, Robert is entering the self-determination program in the next few weeks. So congratulations, and we're really excited for you, Robert.
Thank you. And then I'm also a monthly contributor to Disability Voices United now.
You are. He's one of our big supporters, and we so appreciate that, Robert.
Thank you.
So here's the question. Here's the answer that I have for you. You know, we would love to do an orientation that everybody could be part of. In fact, what we do at SDP Connect is definitely the orientation in just many different pieces. All of you can find, by the way, we've probably done 20 or so SDP Connects, and you can find all of them on our website called theinterchange.org. Click on self-determination. I am going to ask Ed to please put the link in the chat. It's already there, and we have it in both Spanish and in English. You can find all the videos of previous SDP Connects in there. And so I recommend going back and looking. But before we go to the extent of hosting a statewide orientation, what I'd like to do is to make sure that DDS is going to direct regional centers to accept that orientation as the real orientation. Because what I'd hate to do is to have people go through ours and then be told it doesn't count, and then they have to go through the orientation at their regional center. So, so I just gonna, make a point to really ask DDS to make a, kind of a ruling on that, and then to tell regional centers that they have to accept this. So we'll keep you posted. All right, let's do, who's next? Hold on, let me look. Uli Casillas.
No sé si me escuchan. Oh,
Yes.
sí, disculpe. Acabo de escuchar la pregunta que hizo la señora que tiene un niño de 21 años. Yo también tengo un niño de 21 años y la verdad estoy interesada en autodeterminación, pero sí, estoy en blanco en cuanto a eso. Sí quisiera saber quién pudiera orientarme, porque sí escuché que sí también pueden orientarlo a uno personalmente y a quién dirigirme.
Thank you. So Uli, let me ask you, did you go to the conference?
Sí, sí, pero
Okay, great.
sí es mucha información aún
Great.
así. Sí.
So much, you're right. So one of the suggestions I have, Uli, is if you know the Integrated Community Collaborative, the ICC, they're our sister organization, particularly working with the Spanish-speaking community. I sit on their board, and their founders helped to found DVU. So I would, and they provide direct one-on-one assistance to families who are entering the self-determination program. So I would really recommend you reach out. Uli, do you know the ICC?
Sí, sí los conozco.
Okay, great. So I would really recommend, and I believe that they're actually here in this particular meeting today. If they are able to put something in the chat about their intake. So,
Qué bueno. La verdad, yo lo he pensado, ¿verdad? No sé, pero he pensado como si están trabajando más con la gente del norte y yo me siento como excluida de estar con ellos en el grupo porque siento como que para acá, para el lado de Los Ángeles, no es tanta la información que nos tienen como dándonos un apoyo a nosotros. Yo así me siento. No sé si sea verdad, ¿verdad?
yeah, so you should know the ICC is based in Los Angeles. DVU is also based in Southern California. What I can say is that I believe that the regional centers in Southern California are having a little bit of a more difficult time. So everybody may not be hearing the language in your, hearing these questions in your preferred language. For you to hear the language interpreted into English by our wonderful Lorna Silva, you must select English as your language. So if everybody would take a moment and go down to interpretation and select English as your language, and that way you will be able to hear Lorna interpret all the Spanish questions in English, okay? And so what Uli was asking for is that she is overwhelmed at the amount of information that's out there. She was at our conference, but it's just a lot. And she's looking for more one-on-one help. And I do want to say this, that Disability Voices United, DVU, is a very tiny little organization. We have very few staff, and we do not provide one-on-one assistance for people. Because we're mostly an organization that trains in large groups and that helps get laws passed in Sacramento and looks at the whole system and changing the whole system. So you should know that I'm a volunteer. I work full-time for DVU as a volunteer, but we have only one full-time staff member, and that is Ed Herzl, who's here today. And we have currently about 4 part-time staff members. So unfortunately, it's hard for us to help people individually. but there are lots of people out there to do it. The other suggestion I have for you, Uli, is that you should be looking for an independent facilitator, because your independent facilitator should be an expert on the self-determination program and will be able to help you. There were a lot of independent facilitators at our conference. We do not keep lists of them because we want people to be able to have lots of choices in their lives, and I don't want you picking people off of a list. But if you are in Los Angeles, there are some lists out there. The State Council on Developmental Disabilities, Los Angeles Regional Office keeps a list. And there are lots of other lists out there. So I really would encourage you to reach out specifically to the ICC, just because I'm on their board and I love them and think they do an amazing job. But if that doesn't work for you, there are some really great independent facilitators who speak Spanish, like Carla Lehman, who's in Los Angeles. So Carla, I think you're here, you can put your,
a ella.
yeah.
Buenísima.
So if there's anyone who's on this meeting today who is an independent facilitator in Los Angeles who speaks Spanish, please put your contact information in the chat, and Uli, look for it, because like I just saw Carla, or maybe even Carla, Uli, you want to put your email address in the chat and people can reach out to you. All right.
Judy, I've been
Muchas gracias. Ya escuché
De
a
nada.
Carla. y
Go ahead.
sorry. I wanted to just say that I had been collecting some questions from the chat that we'd like to address, since there are no hands up. So I have from Miriam, referring to a question that was asked previously regarding a woman's son who's turning 21 soon. Thank you, Judy. But what happens in year 2 when they ask if you still need all these ILS hours, even though you have not used them for ILS? Common misconception.
Yes, that would be wrong. That is wrong. Oh my God, that makes my head want to explode. So your budget for the first time when you enter the self-determination program is based on your last 12 months of expenses and any unmet needs and change in circumstances. In year 2, it is based on your last 12 months of expenses and any change in circumstances and unmet needs. It is not based on whether you spent what you spent it on. It only is based on whether you spent it at all. So here's an example. I'll give you my son as an example. So my son had a budget last year that wasn't all spent because of COVID. And there's lots of things, great, exciting things we wanted to do that couldn't be done during COVID. So we're about to enter year 2. And what we're going to argue is to say, yes, maybe we didn't spend our whole budgets, but we need that money put back in the budget because we're hoping that COVID is going to end soon. My son has gotten vaccinated. And so now we'll be able to do things like we want to start a small business with him. We want him to join a gym, these kinds of things that are out in the community. We had actually a person that we were calling a friend maker. Remember, you don't have to use terms that are in the traditional system. Stop using terms like respite. Don't stop using disability specific terms like independent living services. We are calling things like, community connector. We have a community connector in his spending plan because he wants to do all these kinds of things, but he needs help connecting him to these different activities in the community. The more you call your spending plan items something that is based in the real world, as opposed to the disability world, or the disability, not the disability world, in the disability system, because it's the system world versus our real world, the more chances you are of being able to have flexibility in the kinds of things that you are doing. So, so your year 2 should only be based on what was spent in the previous year, not based on how you spent it. And this is really, really important that you understand that. And if you were having any problems with your regional centers, I suggest that you go to DDS and tell them this.
Judy, I have just 2 more questions in chat. Would you like to take them or would you like to move to Joyce?
Yeah, for sure.
So first I have from Lorena, do I need to wait for my son to turn 22 in the traditional system so that I can receive more money? Or do I have to do the self-determination before he is 22 and adjust the budget? What is the recommendation?
Definitely before he turns 22. Because you want from the day he turns 22 to have that adjusted budget. Okay.
Thank you for that, Judy. Let me scroll back up.
Hold on a second. Elizabeth Gomez wanted to say something. There she is. I found her. Okay. Elizabeth Gomez, I just asked you to unmute, so you can go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, Judy. Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to add a little bit to the conversation. First of all, amazing conference. And also I want to say thank you, as everyone else is saying, all the information that was available. I wanted to let the community of Spanish-speaking families that one of the things that I did tell them during the conference is that as soon as we receive the videos and the recordings of the conference, I was going to review the conferences with everyone and translate them as we go, as we usually do in all of our training. So if the training is in English, we translate it and we provide the information. We're going to review all the wonderful information that was given at the conference. And I want everyone to know that. I also want to be able that I explained that as far as the work that we do, if we're not the right person, we also know who to refer you to. We also, connect you with independent facilitators that are excellent. They're doing amazing work. So yes, like Carla Lehman and also Lourdes, who's also doing amazing work. There's a lot of great people out there. So we will connect them to that. I also want to say this in Spanish. So para todas las personas que nos están escuchando, yo solo quería decirles que también si nosotros no podemos hacer el trabajo para todas las personas, también tenemos una lista de facilitadores independientes a los cuales nosotros les referimos, igual como ya lo anunciaron, lo dijo como Carla Lehman, y también yo mencionaba Lourdes Gómez, porque también sé que hace bellísimo trabajo y hay muchas otras personas que están haciendo trabajo fabuloso. O si nosotros no podemos, nosotros también les damos la información, pero la conferencia la vamos a traducir toda y la vamos a estar repasando y revisando, y también vamos a hacernos disponibles para todo tipo de entrenamiento que esté disponible. Muchas gracias a todas y solo quería saludarlas y darles esta información. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was super helpful. Okay. I like your t-shirt. When do I get one? All right, so let's go ahead. So I'm going to go back to Ed. And yes. Ed, you have some more questions. Go ahead.
Yes, I have just a couple. Thank you, Joyce and Molly, for holding. I just have a couple of more questions in the chat. Lena Saldana asks, what happens if I did the self-determination like 2 years ago? My son is 23 and has been unable to attend a day program. I have been told I am on a waiting list. Due to COVID-19, I'm very skeptical to send him to a day program. Please advise.
So I'm trying to understand if this person, because I'm not seeing I'm only remembering what you read. So this person got into the self-determination program 2 years ago. Is that what they're saying?
I only have what is in the chat. My understanding from what's in the chat is that she got into what happens if I did the self-determination like 2 years ago. So I guess her son is in the pilot. Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like she was selected for the phase-in period and went through the orientation 2 years ago and has yet to transition into the program. So you don't need to have a day program. You just need to get a budget. And that budget should equal the amount of money that a day program would cost. So what I would do if I were you is to find a very good independent facilitator or a person-centered planner to help you start moving into the self-determination program immediately. There are a lot of great people out there. If you would like to meet some of them, they actually have a network called the Independent Facilitators Network. And you can go to their meetings and listen to how they talk.
She's clarifying, no,
Oh.
I just did the self-determination conference that was required.
Right, well, that must be the orientation.
Got it, okay.
That must be the orientation, yes. Lena, it looks like you did the orientation. So, so I think what you need to do is, if your child is in the self-determination program, got selected for it, then you should find an independent facilitator. It really doesn't matter if you got, at this point, if you got selected for the self-determination program, because by July 1st, everybody will be in it. I want to clarify before I move on about the June 7th versus the July 1st date. So June 7th is when people are supposed to enter the self-determination program. However, in most regional centers, you're not allowed to go into the program until the 1st of the month. So it really will become July 1st. So for all of you, I want you to be prepared for the fact that the information that you're going to start receiving from regional centers and DDS will likely have July 1st on it. And I don't want you to feel like, oh my God, this is horrible, they're changing the date. They're not changing the date. It is just because of the way that the systems work, is that they're moving you from one waiver, as we talked about, to another waiver, and that needs to happen at the beginning of every month. Okay.
So I just have, there are a couple more questions in chat that I'd like to, these two are kind of linked. They're,
okay.
Can we cover this in the SDP basically? And then I will be happy to pass it back over. From Carla, could you please ask if blended specialized food, special diet, and nutritional supplements can be added to the spending plan? And if so, under what code? I know food couldn't be included, but what about specialized diet food? And the other question is related to, I know we get this all the time, is can people are asking how they can get Disneyland, Universal Museum tickets, yearly passes. Is that possible?
Okay, so for food, even specialized diet food is not going to be allowed. It's just really not. Now, supplements like vitamins, I'm not sure. That one has never been raised to me before. But anything that is edible, that is considered food, is definitely not going to happen. And so I wouldn't even try it, because you're just going to get it rejected immediately. Now the second one was, what was it again, Ed? I can't remember.
No worries. The second one is one we get all the time. It's people are asking about how can they get like Disneyland passes or Universal Museum yearly tickets covered? Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. It is absolutely possible. I know of many people who've gotten annual passes to the amusement parks paid for, but let me tell you how it works. It is not, you can't just say, well, I want to get a Disneyland pass paid for. It has to be related to your IPP, your person-centered plan. So through the person-centered planning process and the meeting that you have to do your person-centered plan, you have to, it has to come out from the individual. So my son loves Disneyland. That's his favorite thing to do. And in fact, we're going on Sunday for the first time in well over a year. So, although my son does not have an annual pass in his spending plan. However, what you would have to say is, it can't just be my name is Joe and I love to go to Disneyland. That is not a goal on your person-centered plan. That is not a goal in your IPP. If your goal is socialization, you want to make friends, or maybe it's physical activity, walking, I tell you, we do 10,000 steps every time we go to Disneyland. So if your goals are related to whatever can happen while you're at Disneyland, let's say learning to wait on lines, learning to be in crowds, whatever your goals are, and you can say, okay, the way we're going to meet those goals is by getting an annual pass to Disneyland, and we're going to work on achieving those goals while we're at Disneyland. And that you can do. But it cannot just be out of the blue, I just want to go to Disneyland. And your person-centered plan, remember, should be thinking about the individual's future and what their strengths are and what their hopes and dreams are in the world. A hope and dream is not to go to Disneyland. That is not a hope and dream. A hope and dream is to live a good life, to have friends, to have good health. Those are hopes and dreams that the regional center is going to pay for. This is why the regional center will not pay for your trip to Tahiti, as much as I would love to go to Tahiti right now, because that trip to Tahiti is not the overall goal. If you have a goal in that you want to learn tolerance to be on an airplane, or you want to learn tolerance for travel, or you don't have to go to Tahiti to do that. You can go down the street to go to a hotel and learn how to learn those kinds of skills. So you have to remember that your goals need to be very, very specific, and your goals need to be things that the regional centers would normally pay for: health, employment, socialization, community participation, and all those kinds of things, okay?
And Judy, just real quick before we hop back, because this is related, can you get the pass for the person who's in the self-determination program as well as their companion or the person who's working for them? Or would it just cover the pass for the person who's in the self-determination program?
So I don't know if anybody's been able to achieve getting 2 passes paid for. So I don't know the answer to that. What it will not, this is what it will not, what I wouldn't try. I can't say if it will or it won't. What I would not try is to say, we're giving, let's say, Jose Garcia is the consumer, is the self-determination participant. What it's not going to do is to buy a pass for Jose Garcia to get a Disneyland pass, or actually James Garcia is saying that there is no Disneyland annual pass anymore. So we'll use Universal Studios, which definitely has a pass. So let's say Jose wants, the name would be Jose on the first pass for Universal Studios. And the second pass would be Jose's mom. There's no way, I know for sure you're going to run into problems with that. But if the second pass is caregiver of Jose, you might want to try that. I can tell you this, that back when my son had an annual pass to Disneyland, which is just last year, we had 2 passes for him. We had the pass for my son and the pass that said caregiver. And that caregiver could be rotated through various different people. He has several aides, and different aides could take him at different times. And so, having it under the name of a mom or a dad, you are really pushing it here. And remember that we've got one of the 5 principles of self-determination is responsibility. That self-determination is not a way to shift all your personal expenses over to self-determination. It's a way for people to have flexibility and control over their lives to achieve their goals. So please don't try to put everything in the world into your spending plan. They need to be reaching your goals. They need to be about achieving very specific goals that you have laid out that relate to health, safety, employment, community participation, socialization, all those kinds of traditional, goals that people have in their lives, but you get to reach those goals in very unique and cool ways. All right, I'm going to go to Joyce. Thank you for being so patient.
Oh no, I'm learning a lot in between. So I'm one of those that was all excited about, getting accepted 2 years ago, but nothing's happened. And so, I went right away to got the FMS, and did the personal center plan and all that stuff. And I do have an IF. I'm a little concerned lately because I haven't heard from him. And so I think he might be a little overwhelmed. But the other thing is what you just mentioned about it opening up effective July. Now, is there still going to be a traditional model then as opposed to SDP, or they're just calling it that now? So any services coming through regional center will be automatically through a program set up as the SDP or not?
Yeah, it's a good question. The traditional system will remain for probably the vast majority of people in regional centers. Self-determination is a voluntary program. People can go into it and out of it. It's their own choice. If you go into the self-determination program and then leave, you cannot go back into self-determination for 12 months. So, but you can move out. If you go into self-determination, you can leave it and then go back in after a year. But right now, there's only a little over 500 people in the whole state in the self-determination program out of 380,000 people served. So it's a tiny little program. I think once it opens up in July, many thousands more will go in. And I think that people will start hearing from others, oh, we do self-determination, and lots more people will start going in. But for the time being, the traditional system is the one that will rule the world.
Yeah, so I really appreciated all that, how your brain is working around for your son, and the idea of having a companion, but putting it specifically towards a goal. And so that I could see where it's really critical, especially for us older parents, like, you know, I'm in my 70s, just started creeping there, to have that IF, because, you know, you can't, it's difficult enough, as everyone knows, just to get through the day with all of that. So I think the tricky part is having the caseworker's brain to get out of that traditional mode, because even now, Brianne, we got her in just under the wire before the pandemic. She got accepted into a community program, and I think to facilitate matters, the caseworker, who was also new to this area, and maybe her assignment here specifically, just put it in under what they call them, a POS. Is that what they're calling them? Yeah. And so we have that and behavioral services. And so it is stressful, because it makes me think, okay, let's not rock the boat. But at the other hand, that would cut my nose off, or our noses off, in spite of our face, because we want the flexibility. And like you were saying, there's just one issue, and maybe you don't have time for all the specifics, but she gets periodontal work. Well, we've been having to pay out of pocket. And the caseworker wanted me to get a decline from Dental-Cal, but it was just this last year that they started including that, but her services go back prior to that. And for emotional reasons and everything else, we're not going to convert to a vendor that's just nondescript. So with the IF be able to take all that information then and kind of help us focus that there's got to be one, because you said for good health.
Yes. You know. Yes. And regional centers do pay for dental care that is not paid for by any insurance that you have. And sometimes if there's a lot of dental care that's needed, or maybe this individual needs to be put under general anesthesia to get their dental care, it turns out to a lot of money. And so what a good independent facilitator should do is to not just look at the last 12 months of expenses, but to ask for maybe the last 5 years of expenses, to see, well, we know 3 years ago that she needed to have this extensive work done. We're anticipating that dental work to be done again, and we want to make sure that money's in the budget so that her self-determination program can pay for it. So, you know, while the budget is supposed to reflect the previous 12 months, what's really important is that it also reflects the future. So that means you have to look at not only what has been spent, but what you anticipate will be spent over the year. That's what we're talking about, people who are 21 and leaving the school system. It's also for people who are older, who maybe are developing some health issues as they get older. Their budget's going to need to increase because of that. Budgets, by the way, they also go down. They don't just go up, they go down. And people need to get it into their heads that it's okay. My son, when he was younger, struggled with some things that he no longer struggles with. His budget was probably if I had to guess, twice, even though he was a child in the school system, twice of what it is now that he is as an adult, because a lot of the things that he struggled with as a child, he no longer does. And so that, and we should be happy if that is the case. If services need to be removed because a person is doing great in their lives, we should be happy. The responsibility piece of the self-determination program is critical. It is absolutely critical. And I think we all need to be thinking about that regularly, okay?
And that's a good point, because in the end, it benefits all of us, because then there's no misuse of funds. And so there's there's even a scriptural principle, right? For those who didn't have too much or too little, that everything, comes out. But yeah, I appreciate that, because she goes every quarter. She has to have deep cleaning, and it's not covered under her regular cleanings at county. So that, that's just one piece. But I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And I'll look forward to the recordings of the convention that you had.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Molly Kennedy.
So
go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Hi.
Hi, Molly.
So I just wonder that, especially today, when you talked about doing more orientations that are not sanctified by DDS. I just a couple of weeks ago, the San Diego Local Advisory Committee agreed to fund me to develop, we're calling it pre-enrollment training, plus a person-centered training in workbooks, but I'm developing this for the audience will be clients and then everyone else, but plain language, all that kind of stuff. So one of the things I hope is I could work with a group as I develop this, that it can just not be for San Diego. It could be something that could be used wherever it needs to be used.
Great. Right.
So,
you and I need to talk about this, because I want to work with you on it.
Okay, but I just think there are some regional centers that think the orientation is not great and sees the need to make it more friendly. And I've been pushing that it needs to be geared toward the individual.
Right.
And everyone else will learn from what they learn. So I just wanted to mention that it's going on.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Molly. Molly's a great resource, everybody, if you want to reach out to her. Hi, Evelyn. Go ahead and unmute.
Hola Judy, ¿cómo estás? Una
good.
preguntita, disculpa, entré tarde. Quería saber si todavía están, hasta cuándo van a estar enviando los paquetes de regalo de la conferencia. Y en mi caso, mi FMS pagó en marzo. Y también aparte yo compré el libro de Profiles en Self-Determination y no me ha llegado ninguna de las dos cosas. Quería saber eso. Gracias.
Yeah, so we're really, Evelyn, some of the packages that were sent out got returned. I would say about 25 or 30 of them got returned to us. I'll go ahead and check to see if yours is one of them. For those of you who registered before March 30th, it should have been sent. I'm going to just make a note, Evelyn, to check in with our conference coordinator, Mackenzie, to check on whether yours was sent or not. But we are going to probably in the next week, we're going to start resending a bunch more, and then we'll get all the rest out as soon as people are paid. Not paid, as soon as we have approval that you're going to that your regional center is going to pay. If you're in the self-determination program, we will send it out. But if you're in the traditional system, we have to get approval from your regional center. Okay. Look, just writing it down, Evelyn. Okay. All right. I don't know your name. It's iPhone 1 FNU 21. Go ahead and unmute. I'm not sure if you're watching on an iPhone how easy it'll be, but I asked you to unmute. All right, that doesn't seem to be working. So we're going to go to Diem Nguyen. Oops, hold on. Where'd you go? Hold on. I accidentally lowered your hand. So let me find you again. There you are. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Judy. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. So I have a few questions. I have a 17.5-year-old son. He's severely autistic. And we had a tough year last year. It got really aggressive. And, so we're thinking about requesting for supported living services for him when he turns 18. And we're still in the traditional plan right now. Would that be an option, a good option to go into a self-determination program?
Yeah, it's a great option. For those people who get supported living services in the traditional system, who then move into the self-determination program, it has been extraordinary. I mean, I don't want to say self-determination is better for one person than the other, but I really believe that people who live on their own with supports get the most out of the self-determination program. And the reason is because you get to hire and fire your own people. And the firing thing is really critical. The hiring thing is also very important. Sometimes supported living agencies will let you, pick from among the staff that they have chosen, that they have hired, and then you select someone. But then when you don't like that person and you call your supported living agency and they say, oh, well, you have to give us like 3 good reasons why you don't want this person anymore.
Yeah.
Or, we're gonna be able to, we'll give you somebody to replace them, but it's gonna take us a month. Generally, when you want to fire someone, you want them out of your house like now. And you don't want to wait another 4 weeks. There's usually a reason. Because if it's something like, well, I don't really like the way they make my food, that's something you could work on, right? But usually when you want to fire someone, it means that they're not treating you respectfully, they're not coming in on time, they're not showing up to work. There's some really significant issues that you're having with that individual. And so being able to have control over who it is that you hire, and you, the other thing is that you are their boss. In supported living services, you are supposed to be their boss, but a lot of times they instead think of their the agency that pays their bills as their boss. But in this case, in self-determination, you, the individual with the disability, is the boss. And it's really important that we have that kind of control and authority over our lives. So what I would do is start, if your son's going to be 18 soon, I would start the process immediately to start requesting supported living for him. Remember that supported living is only for people who don't live with their parents. So he would have to live outside of the home. If the individual lives with their parents, they're not getting supported living services unless I know of some cases where they get supported living, but they're living in a separate part of the house, or they're living in a guest house in the back where the parents are not in any way in charge of their lives and it cannot support them. So in that case, I think it can work. But if they're kind of living in their childhood bedroom and mom and dad are still cooking for them, you cannot really get supported living services. It doesn't mean you can't get more help. You definitely can get more help than you're currently getting. But I would start that process now, because Particularly if he's gonna stay in the school system until he's 22, it's a lot harder to get a regional center to support the person moving out while he's still in the school system. Doesn't
that's
mean it
my-
can't happen, but
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you,
that's okay.
but that's my next question. He's homeschooling. So how does
Yeah,
that?
it definitely exists around the state. There are absolutely people who are adults who are still in the school, who are still going to like, let's say, a transition program every day and are not living with their parents. It absolutely happens, but it is a process, and you have to be able to show why it is that that person is no longer living with their parents, even though they're still in the school system. The other thing that you can do is so for my son, you all should know, hated school. He just hated it. He hated being in a segregated classroom. He hated being told what to do every minute of his day. He hated, having to get up early. He's not a morning person. So for all those reasons, he hated school. And so when he turned 18, we did not want to put him into an adult school or a transition program because we knew that it was not going to work for him. And in fact, his school did not recommend that he do that. And he was not going to be able, he didn't graduate and he did not get a diploma. And so we were able to petition our regional center and move him out of the school at the age of 18 and into a community-based program when he was turned 18, and he exited the school system and got his certificate of completion at the age of 18. School districts are, if you have a good one, they're very supportive of that, and regional centers, if they're good, they will support it as well. So that's another thing, take him out of school.
Yeah, so that's my question though. He's been homeschooling because
there you go. So, then it's easier. If you're homeschooling, then you just say we're exiting from school. He is no longer going to receive any education or homeschooling, and he's moving out. I mean, obviously he has to be part of this decision making, right? In person centered planning, it can't be mom and dad wants to kick out the kid from the house. It has to be that this individual understands what it means to move out and that they have to be supportive of that move. So, that's something it's a process, and you have to have a good independent facilitator that understands how to talk about, what it is you want in your life and what is it you hope in your life.
So my last question, Judy, regarding the spending, you're talking about supplements like vitamins and this and that. What happened if my son has a formal diagnosis that, like for mitochondria, that he requires to have? Would the regional center count that as a budget? Like if we have a doctor diagnosis and we have a prescription like for MB12 injection that he's required to have daily.
And that his insurance, Medi-Cal, will not pay for those injections?
No, it's compounded and its insurance doesn't cover it. We've been paying it for years.
So it doesn't matter whether they're in self-determination or in the traditional system for this one, because in the self-determination program, you're required to get what's called generic resources to pay for it. And so if his insurance will not pay for something that is critically needed, like a vitamin B12 shot, the regional centers, you could ask your regional center to pay for it. Have you ever asked the regional center to pay for the shots?
No, I didn't think about. I didn't even.
I would ask them. Because if they are willing to pay for it in the traditional system, then you can easily make that expense in the self-determination program. I don't. If somebody else can raise their hand who knows the answer to that, because I've never really encountered that question before about supplements and vitamins and stuff. So I'm not sure whether a regional center would pay for it in the traditional system and how you would deal with it. Well, good luck. Please keep in touch and let us know how things are going.
Thank you so much, Judy.
Absolutely. Okay, Candy, you are next. Go ahead and mute.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Candy.
Thank you so much. This is the second time that I've gone to the conference. I went to the very first one. I have two kids. Well, one's no longer in Regional Center, but out in Inland Regional Center. And we finally, under the traditional system, we're not in the self-determination yet. And anyway, under the regular traditional, we just got participant directed service for a couple different services. What would your suggestion be if it seems like it's working out and then transitioning over to self-determination? Because she's 33, almost 34, and living at home. I don't know. It's like, do you rock the boat? Do you continue? I mean, because it's like, yay, this finally happened. It happened in January. And it's like, I don't know.
So participant direction, for those people who don't know it, is a program that's been around, a service that's been around for a very long time. It's been expanded during COVID, but many of you could have been having participant directed respite services for decades at this point. You just now can get other kinds of services through participant direction. So participant direction means that you get the regional center allows you to hire a person of your choice, and that they're paid for through an FMS, just like in the self-determination program. What is totally different is that their fee, what you pay them, is absolutely set in stone. It's usually around minimum wage or a little bit above minimum wage. You have no flexibility on how much you pay them. So one of the great things about self-determination and supported living is that you can pay people more than they make in the traditional system and choose to use your budget in different kinds of ways. So for example, if you use a supported living agency right now, they may be getting, even though the supported living worker is getting paid, or the participant directed worker, it's the same thing, is let's say they're getting paid $15 or $16, let's say $16 an hour. The agency is getting paid much more than that, because the agency is getting paid money to do the administrative work, to do the paycheck, and that liability insurance, as well as the employer share of taxes. So it may come out, instead of $16 an hour, may come out to $23 or $25 an hour that they're getting paid. But what's also in that $25 an hour is their overhead costs, which are sometimes quite high. Sometimes it's at 15 or 20%. And so if their overhead costs are high, you still get in your budget that overhead cost, which you can spend in different ways. If you're hiring these people directly, and let's say, so you're getting $24 an hour for that person, and you want to pay them instead $18 an hour, you can just use that extra $6 an hour, to pay for all those other, taxes and liability insurance, and still may be able to come out ahead. So that's what's the great thing about going into self-determination, is to not use agencies for your staffing, or to negotiate a lower price from the agency. The other thing is that most agencies who vendor or have a contract with the regional center, most of them have to write reports for the regional center. And sometimes those reports take a lot of time. When they're in self-determination, they don't have to write reports anymore. So it's actually a great advantage for vendors to work under self-determination, because they can do what they want to do in a creative way and not have to worry about all these reports to the regional center. So I hope, did that answer? So what I'm thinking of is, if you found someone who's really great under participant direction, Having them go into self-determination is even better because you can pay them more and you're really flexible with their hours. In some cases, you should know in participant direction, if you're using an FMS, the FMS may have restrictions on what they're allowed to do. So the FMS may say that person's not allowed to drive them, that person is not allowed to toilet them, that person is not allowed to be sometimes even in the community with them. They're only allowed to be at home with them like a babysitter. And in self-determination, none of those restrictions are there. They can be driving them, they can be going to the movies with them, they can be hanging everywhere that the individual wants to go.
Even if you have, you choose an agency, right? And you're not paying them or being the self-employer or, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know the correct
Right.
terminology.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's the co-employer, and then there's the sole employer model, and then you could just hire an agency. Honestly, this is just my opinion. I don't understand why anybody would continue to use an agency in the current format that they're using it in self-determination, because you're continuing to pay all those extra fees. Remember, agencies have buildings and they have phones that they have to hook up, and they have copy machines, and they have layers of management. All of those things go away when you hire the person directly. So, I do know some people are using agencies because they have enormous budgets, and because maybe the individual has a 2-on-1 most of the time, and so therefore they're hiring like 25 staff, and it becomes very complicated to have so many staff, and they'd rather just have an agency do it, and they have a big enough budget to make it happen. Those are very few people. For most people, like my son, when he moves out, we're going to use a sole employer model, and we're going to hire his staff directly, and they will report to my son, and we will support my son in being their boss. And we will probably have a person who will be kind of the independent facilitator, who will manage the staff, who will create their hours, make sure that everybody's on at all times, so he's never alone. And we will still come out ahead, for sure. We will still have extra money.
Okay, and probably even if you do the co-employer as well, do you think?
Yeah, so what the co-employer model is, for those who don't know, is that you are still have a lot of flexibility and control, just not as much. So with the sole employer model, we have arranged for things like the liability insurance. However, you should know that FMSs, even the sole employer model, can help arrange for liability insurance for you. And it'll come out of your budget. But we've arranged for all the insurance. And but in the co-employer model, you are not actually truly the employer. The agency, the FMS, is the employer. The FMS can reject any staff that you hire. They usually don't. Let me be clear. They usually don't. If you have hired a person who has been working with you for years and meets all the qualifications, the FMSs don't even have time to care that you have a preference of one person over another. But here's an example. If a person comes back and had a DUI or driving under the influence ticket, let's say 10 years ago, the FMS may reject that person. Even though you've known that person for years, you know that person, it was just they made a bad response, they made a bad decision. So when you are in the sole employer model, you can make that choice to hire a person, even if they have a bad driving record or even some sort of minimal criminal record. With the co-employer model, they may say to you, we don't want that person driving. We don't have liability for that person to be driving. So you do have a lot more authority over the people you hire in the sole employer model.
Okay, and I'm so sorry to take up your time, but one last quick question. Under self-determination, if we have some family members that are doing it, they could still continue to do it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, for sure.
okay, even if they were living in the same house with the person or no?
Yes. If the
Okay.
person's over age 18, they can definitely do it. If they're under age 18, it can be an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent, but it cannot be the parents getting paid.
Oh, okay, okay. Judy, thank you so much.
Absolutely, Candy.
Okay,
So folks, we are gonna have to cut out at exactly 6 o'clock because we always promise to have Spanish interpretation. And we have booked her till 6 only. I also have to go to another meeting as well. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell everybody that we're still here for you. We promise that we will get all the information, all the recordings of all of the conference sessions out to you next week. You're gonna love going through all of them. We will be here. This SDP Connect happens every 2 weeks usually. There are times when there's a holiday or we're having another webinar for COVID or some other reason. Please also go to our interchange. It's called theinterchange.org. Please go there and ask questions, form a community. It's a way that you can ask each other questions and be part of it. That's why we created it. We created it for you. We didn't create it for us. And so please go there, get answers to questions, find all the other SDP Connects we've had over the past year, and also meet each other. It's a great way to meet each other. All right. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate, we loved having you at our conference. It took us a few days to recover, I must admit, even though, I didn't tell you just in 1 minute about our legislation. Our legislation exists to create some accountability and oversight of the self-determination program. It has passed through the first hurdle last week, but we still have a long, long way to go. And we so appreciate the many of you who called to provide support and lend support of the bill. We have some ideas of how to make the bill even stronger, and we're hoping to make that happen over the next couple of weeks. We will absolutely keep you informed about the legislation, and maybe even at our next SDP Connect, it'll be all about this legislation. So thanks, everybody. We so appreciate it. I know that there were a lot of extra questions in the chat. We're able to capture those questions to make sure that we can answer them in the future. Follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and please reach out with any other information. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.